Hi, Clutter Fairy fans. This is the Clutter Fairy Weekly for March 1st, 2022. I'm your co-host, Ed Gumnick, and I'm speaking with Gayle Goddard, certified professional organizer and owner of the Clutter Fairy in Houston, Texas.
Hi, everybody. The Clutter Fairy Weekly is the webcast and podcast that digs deep into the clutter that piles up between you and the life you want to be living. We explore the habits and behaviors that lead to clutter, and we suggest strategies to slow the accumulation, reduce the collection, and comfortably manage the stuff we decide to keep.
If you're new to our Zoom meeting, we want to let you know that you can share your comments and questions via the chat, and I'll try to make sure Gayle gets to them before we move on to another topic. You can also use the raise hand feature if you'd like to make a comment or ask a question yourself via audio or video. And we are streaming live on Facebook as well, so you can share questions and comments there, and I'll relay them to Gayle. We're going to start, as we usually do, by talking about last week's weekly tittle assignment, which was called You Get Your Thing in Action. The assignment was to improve the usefulness of a multi-function space in your home by identifying desired uses and making a plan. We'd love to hear from our participants in Zoom and Facebook who attacked the tittle this week. Please let us know in the comments. YouTube viewer Nancy shared this report. Because of your videos and the pandemic, I've changed our formal dining room to a multi-purpose room. My knees are bad, so I moved extra food, snacks, beverages, and paper products onto a cart under the window in the dining room. We had only used the dining room a couple of times a year. I also put a small desk in there to hold paperwork I need to manage my appointments, bills, coupons, etc. It's working.
I just love stories like this so much. I'm very glad to hear that you've made an unused space work for you in your life right now. And I think the introduction of a rolling cart is a great idea. So you can move it around and make use of the items and let the cart carry the heavy things to lessen the strain on your knees. Kudos on the innovation in the dining room. That is a perfect example of we don't use it as a dining room exactly, and we might as well make use of it every day in our lives instead of 3 times a year when other people come over. Good adaptation. Good story.
Well, and M said, by listing the uses and furniture used for them, I discovered that some of my dual use items could be in other rooms. By consolidating, I realized that I can make the bathroom a more complete tornado shelter.
Oh, there you go. That's a good idea. And that's one of those inner rooms with the walls that's supposed to be safer to be in. So good for you.
Yeah.
That's a good one. I wouldn't have thought in terms of a tornado shelter, but that's a good thing to plan for. We don't live in tornado country here.
Well, you do occasionally, but not super regularly.
Right.
M went on to say, on the other hand, I'm wondering if purposely splitting up the items in a certain subject is consistent with being uncluttered. For example, what about splitting up my library so that cookbooks are in the kitchen, inspirational books in the bedroom, etc.? I remember my aunt kept one toothbrush in the kitchen and another in the bathroom. Is that a way to invite clutter or a good idea?
I think it's good to have things near where you use them. It's also a way for you to see if you have the cookbooks in the kitchen and you don't get into 80% of them, it helps you filter. Like I have all these cookbooks here, and even though they're right here at my fingertips, I don't go to them. These are my 6 favorite cookbooks where I go get stuff all the time. And the rest of these were just entertainment at one point. And so maybe you want not every cookbook that you have in the kitchen, but maybe you want the go-to cookbooks in the kitchen. There's a few things I have in the house that I keep everywhere, like a pair of scissors. I don't want to have to run into another room when I need a pair of scissors in the bathroom. And so I keep a pair of scissors in the drawer in the bathroom. I keep one in my office. I keep one in next to the chair where I sit and watch the television. We have scissors in the kitchen that are for cutting on food. And so it's an object that makes sense to me to be accessible. It's a tool I use all the time. And so having it be everywhere that I might need one makes sense to me.
But if you're a person who uses scissors every couple of weeks, then that's not not your solution, right?
Yeah. And the idea of having supplies in more than one place, another way that I do that is there's cleaning supplies that are specifically for the bathroom. And I leave those supplies in the bathroom under the sink. I don't keep them with the other cleaning supplies and then have to go get them and bring them and use them in the bathroom and take them back. I have a storage space for them in the space where they get used. So there's sometimes where those small action items, the things that you use all the time, make sense that they be parked where they get used. But your idea of not parking a collection of things somewhere, if it's not a collection of things that you're actually using, if it's not stuff that's in active use, I wouldn't think splitting them up in various places makes sense, if that helps. It is all about action for me. When I'm working in people's houses and I'm trying to decide where should this be stored, I'm going to ask, how do you use this? How often do you use this? Where do you use it? And then I'm going to pick the storage space so that it's in the proximity of where it's going to get used. If it's something that they say, oh, I pull that down once or twice a year, then I'm going to be more comfortable storing it away somewhere that's less accessible, or you got to get on a ladder to get it, or it's not in the right room, but it's better stored in a closet down the hall if it's not something you have to have all the time. But if it is something that you use more frequently, then it makes better sense to me that it's constant use means it should be where it gets used. So it's easier to use it. And you don't have as many, retrieval problems. You don't have to go find it somewhere in the house and then bring it to where you want it. It's already where it has a parking space near where you're going to use it.
Marilyn says, my husband's art stuff is now on a cart that can be wheeled into the closet, and our kitchen is tidy when he's not painting. Yay.
Yay. That is a good one. Cause I'm sure he has like a painting jags where he gets into it. And then there's times where he's not into it. And so that's a great idea that you can wheel it away when he's not in the mood.
And CJ says, Mom and I each made a list of all the activities and storage needed in our respective homes' living/dining room spaces. I managed to clear away some of my clutter to make more room for both Zoom meetings and exercising.
Oh, that's a good one.
CJ.
Yeah, good job, man. I love that you guys both made lists so that everybody's needs and desires to do things in the house were considered. That's very wonderful.
Well, it's both two houses that she.
Yeah, two each. Okay, gotcha. Okay.
And Bonnie said, my dining room now has a small desk where I could do bill pay, etc. The dining room table is now where my husband and I play cards or do a puzzle.
Oh, that's a good idea, because the dining table is big enough to do a puzzle on. That's wonderful. See, y'all are getting super creative about it. I love that. That is exactly what we're hoping for you, is that you make the house work for the way that you want to live. That's wonderful. Y'all are doing great.
And Lee's reported shifting furniture for art cart in back of living room and found mold growing on wall behind entertainment cabinet. Glad I caught it early. Yikes.
Yes, I wonder what that means. Good job. Lucky you. But exposing it can only be helpful, right? So somebody can get in there and figure out what's dripping and making it wet.
And then several people in the chat mentioned on the topic of where to keep things that you use frequently. Besides scissors, Bonnie said, I have a storage container of cleaning supplies on each floor. And Lynn said, I keep a roll of Scotch tape in several places.
Oh, me too. Scissors and Scotch tape.
And then Connie said, I store all towels in the bathroom instead of linen closet. We're talking about, where you're going to use it. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, some bathrooms don't have the capacity to hold the towels.
Right.
Depending on the size and the cabinetry in there. But if you have a space for them, that's awesome. I think that makes better sense. Yeah,
both of our bathrooms are teeny tiny with extremely limited storage space. So the towels are in the spare bedroom. Okay, let's get to our main topic. We'll come back to some more comments later. Today we're going to talk about help. Sometimes the work of organizing is too overwhelming for one person to tackle, so we ask for help. But helpers who aren't sensitive to our goals, priorities, and emotional needs can create more problems than they solve. Today, Gayle is going to offer guidance on asking for help with your decluttering project or offering your assistance to others who need it.
I wish I could help all of you at your homes get your decluttering project in motion. There just aren't enough hours in the day or days in the week. As I well know right now, during organizer busy season, I'm drowning in work right now and prepped this presentation last night at midnight. So I just can't be the on-site support person for all of you. So the next best thing I can do is help you get help, and the right kind of help. It's almost always more fun to do a job together than it is to do that job alone. But for this job of facing your life's worth of possessions and making decisions about what can be passed on, you need a special kind of person to support you. Not just anyone will do, and the wrong person can derail your efforts completely. We certainly don't want that outcome, so let's aim for the right one. We can start with the pros and cons of asking for help with your project. Here's some pros. A helper, somebody new on the scene, provides a fresh perspective about how to tackle the project. They offer objectivity, where you are very subjective about your stuff and very sentimental about your stuff. A helper is not married or attached to your things. So to them, it's just the things that they actually are, and they can be much more objective about it. A helper possesses skills you lack, but you can learn from them. They're going to have specific knowledge you lack, especially a professional organizer who will know how and where to get rid of stuff by donation or disposal or recycling, as well as possessing lots of information about tools and supplies. Like I said earlier, many hands make light work, right? Two or more can accomplish more than one, and they make it at least more fun than it is to do it alone. A lot of the time when I'm working with clients, we're laughing and cutting up and telling jokes and having a good time. And it makes the time pass quicker, and it makes it easier to get something done with a smile. A helper can free up time for you so that you can spend it on tasks that most need your attention. Since you're the decision maker, you can focus on choices while they deal with the choices that you made. So you spend all of your mental energy on trying to decide what to do or keep and not keep. And then they go and put that decision that you made into the keep pile or the donation pile. They can be moving things around and sorting. A lot of what I do for clients is pre-sort things, pull things out and sort them and say, okay, here's the piles, let's look at them so that you can make the decisions. A helper, especially a professional, can see beyond what you think you need to do and why, and to get at the reality underneath. A professional organizer can help you see the life that you want to be living and how to get there, and not just the mess that occupies so much of your attention and consciousness. But even a friend or a family member that's coming to help you can do the same. They can see that you think that you need to do this, but there might be another point of view, another way to do it. And having a second pair of eyes on there can help you get past your own locked in ideas of what needs to be done or how it needs to be done, and offer you some other options. Here's the cons of trying to get help. It takes some trial and error to find the right helper. It can take time to bring a helper up to speed on the project, but you can think of it as an investment in training. A helper may offer an approach that feels at odds with your style or method. Sometimes the extra person challenges your preconceived notions, and that feels a little uncomfortable. But you may ultimately decide that their way is better. And you can always try it and see if you like it. And if you don't like it, you can stop. Seeking help can compound negative feelings like guilt and shame, embarrassment and helplessness. This mostly happens when you still feel like you should be able to do this yourself, that you should have the skills yourself. And so the idea of asking for help means that something is wrong, that you've done something wrong, or that you have failed in some way. If you ask for help, you're going to have to put some energy and effort into managing or supervising the helper. That it does require your intervention and participation. It's not usually something that you can ask somebody to do, go away and come back 3 hours later and be happy with the results, because they don't have your brain and they can't make decisions for you. The last con I'm going to list is that professional help costs money. It's an investment in getting something done that you can't make movement on yourself, but it's an expensive proposition, I'll have to say. Think of this as buying the higher quality time you need to focus on the tasks that require your attention. It is one way to reframe it. It costs money and you feel like you're spending money on something you should be able to do. This often is how people feel about it. But once you accept that you're buying intervention so that you can move on and focus on other things instead, it makes more sense to people.
Well, and I think that one way to think about that is you know, if your pipe breaks, you don't want to go out and learn plumbing skills and buy all the stuff at Home Depot if you don't have them already.
While the water's pouring into your bedroom, yes.
Yeah, and so certainly if you're so backlogged and you don't have a handle on the habits to keep it from getting worse, then this might be a really good time to look for a professional with the skills to help you today, right away, soon.
And to stop the flow of the buildup, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so here's reasons people ask for help. They are chronically overwhelmed. You have a sense that you're in over your head and you can't or you won't complete the work yourself. And this happens a lot. Lots of people call me because they've been trying to do it themselves and they just can't make it happen. And if they're feeling overwhelmed and stopped trying to do it alone, asking for help and getting another person in there helps them get past the overwhelm bump. It helps you get beyond your sort of blind, glazed, deer in the headlights look and let somebody get the ball rolling for you. People ask for help because they're having conflicts with other members of the household. Somebody that's complaining nonstop, that lives with you, that's complaining all the time. It's a constant source of conflict. And many people get help just to stop the complaining and the arguments that ensue from the members of the household that are barking at you to fix something that they think is your fault. And there's nothing more discouraging than having people in the house blaming you for something that you are wishing to be different and hoping to be different and not feeling like you have the skill set to make different. And then somebody's just piling on and making you feel bad. And so if you can get past that to asking for help, it'll help you get out of some of those arguments. If you get stuck frequently because you lack the skills or the supplies or the specific knowledge to get it done, that's a good reason to ask for help. You know where you want to be headed. Maybe you have an idea of what you want in the house, but you just don't know the steps to get there. You know that you want this clutter gone, but you don't know what to do, A, B, C, in what order to get there. It's a good reason to ask for help. You want accountability. You want someone checking your work and keeping you on track. You need a body double. You need somebody that is going to stand there and keep you focused on what you're doing. And there's nothing like paying money to help you focus on the job. And I have clients who say to me, if I didn't have this appointment on the calendar with you, nothing would ever happen. And so they are paying for the accountability of my presence and my time on the calendar. And they know that I'm going to get in my car and show up at their front door at 10 o'clock or at 2 o'clock and be going, okay, let's go. And so that gets them in motion where other things, anything at home alone without me, they can't get in motion. Another reason to ask for help is if you've started to have health or mobility challenges. We've talked about that a lot and how it limits people's ability to deal with clutter in a more timely fashion because you're pushing up against your own limitations. And so if you're starting to struggle and mobility and the ability to get up and down, climb ladders, bend over, carry weight, these are all things that are sort of requirements of the job. And if that's a struggle for you, then you're not going to be able to accomplish something without some intervention, somebody else coming to be that lifter, hauler, climber that you cannot be right now. Another reason to ask for help, you've had some big life changes. You had your space under control until X happened, until the baby came, until you got divorced, until your mother moved in, until you changed your job or you got promoted or whatever. And now you just can't seem to get a handle on things because you've got too much else going on. That's a really good reason to ask for help.
Yeah. And we have a comment from Sandra on Facebook who said, my daughter has asked me to come help her organize her closet and integrate her stuff with her new husband's stuff.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Won't it be a shock when you tell her, yeah, you got to give up half the closet for your husband? A lot of women are like, what? I have to give up part of the closet for him? Yeah, if you want him to stay in the closet.
Some husbands will settle for as little as a third or a quarter, but
I know, right? But it seems a little squashy, right? It seems kind of mean. Yeah, I get some shocked looks when I start. Yeah, you want them to feel like they belong here, right? Another reason to ask for help is your own neurodiversity. If the way that your brain works feels at odd with the idea of ever getting organized, somebody that's ADD or maybe has other brain injuries, brain issues, if you have some neurodiversity that makes you not neurotypical, and those kinds of brain processes get in the way of you getting organized, then it's a good time to get help to keep you on track. And sharing the problem with someone else and needing to explain it to them and to get their point of view helps you see options and solutions to the issues you've been having. This is a good reason to ask for help. It's the act of talking out loud that stops the story loop in your head about how and why you're stuck. And it helps you look at the reality of the situation instead. Then you can see things more clearly too. I just did that 2 weeks ago. I needed help with something and I couldn't get myself in motion alone. And I asked one of my friends to come over and sit with me. And as soon as she was sitting at the table with me in the chair and I'm having to explain what's going on, I immediately started clicking on what the steps are and what I needed to do and making lists and talking out loud. The whole process of having her there and having to explain it to her got me focused and in motion right away. And so it was a real help to me to have that person come and help me think through this project.
It's really amazing the power of just talking something over with a friend. I struggled for about an hour and a half on a project on Friday, web stuff, a problem I could not solve, and was talking to Todd, who helps me out with stuff and edits these videos, and talked to him about the problem for about 45 seconds and the solution popped into my head, and it has to do with how different the process of rolling thoughts around in your head is from the process of putting things into words to share with someone else,
to explain it to them.
And just going through that action can help you find clarity that
100%
was hiding there for you.
100%. And you don't realize how your brain is just mucking up the process until you try to explain it to somebody else. And then you realize, oh, I've just been lost in the caverns of my brain. And I couldn't see outside because I was in the maze somewhere. And when you start having to talk to somebody about it, you suddenly have all that, it's like it's suddenly at your fingertips again. And it really is helpful that way.
It's like what goes on in your head when you're by yourself is, you make up stories to explain the thing. And it's just a story. And then when you go to tell it to someone else, you realize, oh, that's ridiculous, isn't it?
That makes no sense at all.
That makes no sense. Thank you for listening to me and solving my problem just by listening to me.
Well, and I think this is why we work together so well as a team, because when we start talking about this stuff, this is what we started doing in 2007. We started talking about it over coffees, and we were able to create all kinds of content and value just by having a conversation back and forth between ourselves about what's going on and why does it matter, and having to explain it back and forth to each other. And it really made a difference to do it as a team.
Well, and it occurs to me that we started working together in February of 2007. So happy 15th anniversary.
Oh, thank you. Happy 15, right? Woohoo. It's true. Oh my God. Isn't that crazy? We just went by. Well, there you go. 15 years later, we're still here talking about it. We're not in the same coffee shop anymore. I miss our coffee shop days, but we're still having this conversation every week, and it's wonderful. So there you go. That's a reason to ask for help. Here are some reasons people don't ask for help. They have a lot of fear of judgment, of being seen as deficient or helpless or vulnerable, of the unknown. When you start having fear about what people are going to say, that shuts people down, and they don't ask for help because of that fear. It's also really likely that someone in your life is judging you for a perceived failing of not being able to do the work yourself. And that judgment makes you feel like you failed, you feel like a failure, and it makes you stop for asking for help because you feel like you're embarrassed that you're a failure. Like you add the whole failure label onto yourself because people in your life are judging you. And then you come away with, I'm such a failure, nobody will help me, or I don't deserve help. That's part of it too. Like I'm a failure and therefore I don't deserve help. And that's, people don't ask for help because of that. You feel a bunch of shame about letting someone see the current state of the stuff. I go into people's houses that are in really great shape, like what I consider to be really great shape. I can see the floor. You can walk around. It's not completely overwhelmed. It's not cubic volume in the house. And yet people still feel shame about it. And they're like, oh, is this the worst house you've ever seen? I'm like, no, it's not the worst house you've ever seen. Not even by a long shot. But in their mind, it's so big and awful that they can't imagine feeling anything but shame about having somebody come in and look at the house. And it's like, oh, not even a little bit. Are there rats in here? Then you don't even come close to the worst. So don't worry about it. There's sometimes an unwillingness to admit that you can't get the job done on your own. And clients often tell me, I just can't do this if you're not here. If you can't admit that this is true, then you're not going to ask for help because you are still trying to believe yourself that you can do it yourself. And it's to your own detriment. You're the one that loses for not listening to the truth. That is, I never do this unless someone's here with me. And so that belief that you can still get it done yourself will stop people from asking for help a lot. And I'm sorry, because help would be useful at this point. What about those of you who want to help others tackle their projects? There are several people listening right now, like Deborah and Rowan. I don't know if Rowan has joined us, but she's been doing it too, who are reaching out to help others right now. So what are your reasons to offer your help? If you see somebody struggling with a problem on which you yourself have made some progress, then you can be in a position to share, hey, I did this and I did it this way, and I have experience and I can share my experience. You've got skills and knowledge that you want to offer to them. You can learn more about your own organizing process by helping someone else develop theirs. Like Ed said, he got stuck. He talked for 45 seconds and suddenly he came up with an answer. So you can offer help because helping someone else might help you get clear about your own stuff as well. You may be motivated by compassion and a genuine desire to help the person improve their life. It's somebody that you love and you want to be useful to them. So that's a reason that you might want to offer your help. Lastly, you want to offer your help because someone that you care about has asked you for help, and that's something that you want to offer them. And be a kind thing for you to do at the very least. Here's reasons that you do not want to offer help. And I want you to pay attention here. If you feel frustration or anxiety about the person's mess, you will radiate your feelings to them, and then your help becomes a source of stress for them. So if you see their mess and it makes you feel distressed or frustrated or irritated, you are not the person to go in and be helpful. You will only make the situation worse if you feel like that. If you feel really sorry for the cluttered person, pity is a valid emotion, but it's not a good source of motivation because it assumes a degree of helplessness in the other person. They don't need your pity. They need your understanding and support. So if you just feel sorry for them, it's not really a good place for you to step from as a helper. Sometimes you think that you want to help because you want to be able to change the person in question. They haven't been waiting all of their lives to suddenly have you change who they are or how their brain works in one working session.
This is where we ought to have a buzzer noise we can play. Bah, wrong answer.
Wrong answer, right? Believing that you can fix someone's relationship to clutter will lead to your vast disappointment that it doesn't happen. And that presumption that they just need you to help them change is not a good reason to go help, because you will be disappointed and they will be irritated, and it will end up in, it will not accomplish anything that anybody's trying to get done. Here's another reason not to offer help. You've recently gotten your clutter under control and you're convinced that you know the solution, the actual solution. You'll need those skills that you've learned for sure, but no one's solution is exactly the same as yours. So don't assume that you figured out the path and you just need to go tell people what the path is and they'll be able to do it. Again, you're destined to be frustrated as a helper, and the person is likely to be frustrated as a receiver of that help. So it's not a good enough reason to offer help.
I'm reminded of a YouTube comment that we got a few weeks ago. I think it was probably tongue in cheek, but this person said, I didn't really want to listen to you going on and on about this. I want a miracle solution.
Oh, right. They were hoping for that miracle solution to drop out of the sky.
Oops, sorry. If there were a miracle solution, we probably wouldn't have done 200 videos.
Right. There probably would not be an organizing a national association of people that do this for a living if there was a miracle solution, right? Okay, so let's see. How can you ask for help? If you're uncomfortable with the idea, then ask for help with a small project, some little small project with a short time frame, and get somebody to come help you with something little. You want to consider who will manage their judgment and be supportive of you before you ask. So don't be asking somebody you think is super judgy. And I've said this before. You want to ask your really nice and kind and gentle friend. You don't want to ask your super judgy, barky, snarky, sarcastic friend to come and help you. Ask for a couple hours at a time in a schedule form. Can you help me 2 hours a week, or 2 hours this week? Or can you come for a 4-hour day every other week? Something like that. They need to know that you're not asking them to come and work on the project nonstop until it's complete. Like you're not booking them for a week of endless, 2 weeks of endless days nonstop until you make it around the house. You're just asking for a couple of hours at a time in sort of a repeating a regular manner. And that's a little bit more, you can tackle a little bit more that way. They can come and work until they're tired and go home again and come back again later. You don't want to burn your helper out any more than you want to burn yourself out. So make sure they understand what you're asking for and it isn't nonstop decluttering. Offer something in trade. You can say, let's work for 2 hours and then we'll go eat lunch, or you'll make them a cake that they like, or you'll buy them a gift card occasionally for a massage. Something in your budget that acknowledges the work that they're providing as a trade. Maybe you guys can do it for each other. You can work in one house for a couple of hours and another day you can work in the other house, and you can go back and forth. If both of you have an issue, maybe you can be each other's helpers, right? Make sure that you describe the parameters when you ask for help. I want to make the decisions, and I want to have you talk with me about the ones that I'm finding hard. I need your help taking things to the donation, or to picking up the trash, or moving the boxes. You want to explain to them exactly how you want their participation and what you want to do and what you want them to do, so that they're clear about how they're going to participate. On the flip side, instead of how do you ask for help, how do you offer help? If you're going to be the one that's offering help, before you offer, make sure you reflect on your motives and expectations. You need to know what you're doing and why you're doing it before you start offering. Check your judgment at the door. You cannot be judging about anything, or it will backfire on both of you and you will not be happy at the end. Be willing to be vulnerable and share the story of your own struggle. Talk about how it's been hard for you. Talk about how it made you feel. And if you feel like you've survived or need help or come up with a solution, gotten some success, share all of those things to explain the story to them about how you're doing it and how you can be helpful to them. Acknowledge their difficulty and acknowledge the progress you've seen them make. All of those things can help them understand that you're not judging them or telling them that they're bad or wrong. You're just offering to support a friend that needs difficulty and how it would benefit you to be helping them as well.
I think that's a biggie because, as we've talked about on several occasions, you lose sight of what you've already accomplished. The clutter
yes.
you can't see the clutter that's gone unless you've taken painstaking before and after photos.
Mm-hmm.
You forget, and
how dense it was.
To get the acknowledgement from your helper to say, oh, but remember when I started, you couldn't even get through that back door,
Yeah.
and look how far you've come.
Yeah, it's good to have somebody else notice and acknowledge what's been different, because you are constantly creating negative space as you do the work. And if you don't, you forget. And then you feel like there's still so much more to do and you forget how much you've already done. When you help, you want to be really cheerful, optimistic, super patient and supportive, and never patronizing. Super patient, I think, is really important. There's going to be moments where you're like thinking in your head, come on, we just need to move this over there, or you just need to make a decision. And they're not going to be able to make the decision in the same speed that you are. Don't forget, it's not your stuff. So you don't have the same feelings about it as they do. And you're not trapped by all of that sympathetic attachment. You don't have any of that. So you can see it very objectively. It's not your stuff and they can't. So you can't use that sense of objectivity to be judging them about how slowly they're going through stuff. You have to be patient. Listen really actively. Repeat points that are important to the person you're helping as they talk about what their struggle is, as they share stories with you, interacting, explaining their life, what didn't work, what did work, what they're hoping for, what the divorce was terrible, the new marriage is wonderful, like whatever they have to share with you. You want to listen and notice what's important to them and what they're talking about. They're giving you clues about what needs to stay and what needs to go. Take some notes to keep the momentum and continuity between sessions. And then take those before and after photos that we've talked about, or remind them to take some before and after photos on their phone. So if they're comfortable with that option, that way you can say, go look, you took a picture of what it looked like before and go look at how much better it is now. Let's compare. It's part of being supportive of them, to remind them to take the photos and then go back and look at the photos when they're feeling discouraged. And acknowledge progress frequently. The biggest problem that people have is they don't feel like they can celebrate any wins until they get to the end of the project. And any project that is big enough to require help and many hours to work on it is a big project. And if you have to wait to the end to be supportive and success motivated, to acknowledge that something good has happened, you're going to be waiting a long time. And so it's really important to acknowledge the wins of the interim steps. Look, we got this floor uncovered. Look, we got this room done. Look, the closet is accessible now. Look, we did the pantry. That's why we spend so much time asking people to do a tittle and then talk to us about the tittle, because we want you to know that we notice that you're making progress. And that is part of why you come here, so that we can say, you're doing great. You did a great job. That is a wonderful win. That is a good adjustment. That is a great adaptation. These are all progress steps that need to be acknowledged and supported. And that's, as any kind of a helper, that's something you need to do. And just don't let your own judgment and values take control of the project. It's not your house. It's not your stuff. And so how you would do it and what is important to you is not going to be what's important to your friend. And so you need to let their values control the project, drive the project, steer the places and directions that you go. So let's talk about some sources of help. The first one that everybody goes to, many people start by asking a family member to help them, either family in the same house or family that don't live in that house. Although it's an obvious first step, this is a pretty big minefield for lots of people. For one thing, the family in the home may be the ones complaining the most about the house. With parents or siblings, they may have been the ones to complain about your spaces your whole life. You've likely asked them for help many times and found it resulted in arguments or them shaming you, or they're refusing to help anymore in frustration. Another issue that comes up with asking family for help is the person who wants to help so much, they want to run over and start hauling away all kinds of stuff on the theory that you just haven't worked at it hard enough. If they just come and work like a tornado, so much will get done. They don't actually understand what's stopping the progress and assume it's just focusing on working. Same thing happens with friends. If you ask friends, they're a source of help. But like I said, you need to pick that friend as the person who is A, not overwhelmed in your space, B, isn't super judgmental or sharing of that judgment with you, and can be gentle and supportive of you while you guys work. Neighbors are a source of help. Ed had an example of doing a group garage sale. If the neighborhood's doing a garage sale and everybody's doing it as a sort of a block sale or whatever, then your neighbors can help you pull things out, get things out to be sold. They can be some helpers for you in that process. Experts are professional organizers, custom installers, junk hauling people. A professional organizer can be available on several levels. One of them is, if you have a newer organizer, they can usually be more budget conscious. They have less work, they have less experience, so they're not going to be as expensive. You can go with an established pro that has lots of experience. You'll pay more for it, but you'll benefit from all the experience and the expertise and the specializations that they have. If it's a really big project, you may want a professional with a team of people that can come and work all at once. The obvious one is when somebody moves and they need help unpacking. Bringing a team in means that it just all gets unpacked in a much quicker and gets put away in a thoughtful manner. They think about where the stuff's going to go and where it's going to be used before they put it up. And so it helps you set up the house in a more organized fashion to begin with when you move, and doing that with a team means that it can be done quicker and you can get back to living in your house faster. There's you can ask for sort of general mess helpers. They can be tasked with picking up recycling and trash. You can have help with paper piles. Helpers can pre-screen your mail. And it's one of the things that I do a lot. I go in and pre-sort the mail without throwing anything away, because that means that some of the sort work that I can do really quickly means that I can hand somebody's mail and say, here, these are all flyers. This is all junk mail. This is all financial mail. This is all newspaper catalogs. This is all receipts that might be tax related. And so I can do a lot of pre-sorting without throwing anything out. And then the person that is dealing with each category of paper, they have one decision to make around this type of paper, and it makes it easier for them to work on the paper. So they can prepare folders, make labels, help you file, and leave the decision-making about the paper to you. But there's a lot of physical opening, sorting, unfolding, taking out of envelopes, separating, recycling, all that kind of stuff that they can do without throwing anything out and say, here's my pile of what I think is recycling. And you didn't spend any time on that. You only spent the time on making decisions. That is your list of things that people can do as a helper. And so I think we've covered the topic pretty thoroughly. I'm wanting to see if we have
quite a few comments to
okay, let's see what people have to say
before we run completely out of time. Connie said, I use a story to start decluttering small sectors. I pretend I am doing the job for this very strange lady who just can't do it.
Hey, whatever works for you, right? Good for you to have an imagination that you can use that thought process to be more objective and separate yourself from it. That's great. That's a great way to sort of break through the personal attachment to things, right?
Well, then it's got a sort of
Clever.
a fake it until you make it
Mm-hmm.
vibe to it.
Mm-hmm.
And, like pretending you're playing the role of an organized person in a TV show
Play.
about your life or whatever, whatever it is that lets you detach a little bit from the emotion and make it more
Mhm.
fun, engaging, something.
Well, and be more, realistic about the fact that it's an object and not all of the emotional, sentimental attachments that you have attached to the object. It gives you that separation again, so that it's like, oh yeah, if this stuff was in the garage sale and I was going to buy it, I would pay $1 for it. I wouldn't pay $50 for it. So you can get more realistic about it that way. It's clever. I like it.
Jane said, I found I have to be very specific about what I'm asking for help with. A
Mm-hmm.
couple friends have helped me and we'll try to jump the tracks into other areas. When I have them to help, I need to keep us focused on the goal for each session.
Yeah, and you can do that with proximity, right? Like if what you're going to do is deal with mail, put them in a room where that's the only thing, like you sit at the dining table and we're going to sit here and this is what we're going to work on, and you bring the mess to them instead of them going into the room and getting distracted. And it's also probably a sign of their own overwhelm, that they feel like it all needs to be tackled and they get distracted by, I think I could do this part better, or I'm more comfortable in over here, even though it's not actually what you want them to work on. They're just showing you the places that they feel more comfortable and more like they have better skills to deal with it, or that they feel like it all needs to be addressed and they sort of start to work on all of it in their minds. They're working on all of it at once. It's good to give directions. Being a supervisor is important.
Connie said, I use this appointment every Tuesday to do something.
Yeah, see, we're decluttering with you, right?
Yeah.
We're all helping you while you work on it. That's awesome. And it's an hour that you dedicate and you work on some piece, and it's an hour that you wouldn't get done otherwise. So good for you. Lots of people do that, actually.
And Anya shared, I realized years ago that I'm able to offer advice or tips, but I suck at really helping because I am definitely too impatient, and just dealing with my husband's stuff is enough for me. I actually do not like dealing with other people's stuff. Doesn't spark joy. Ha ha
There
ha.
you go. Yay.
Well, then you absolutely shouldn't. Yeah, I mean, your tips and advice are help enough, and
Mm-hmm.
they can find somebody who does enjoy it.
And if you're not enjoying it, and then you're just making a bad situation worse, right? You're just making them feel uncomfortable because they know that you're not happy being there. And so good for you to recognize that's not your skill set. That's fine. It doesn't have to be. You can give them some ideas, you can make suggestions, and send them on to the friend who's more willing to be there and do the work, right? Good for you.
Rowan said, sometimes it is good to remember to encourage someone to set aside the difficult stuff and find easy stuff.
Right.
A place to start.
And do the easy stuff themselves and save the difficult stuff for working with you, so that they have support while they're facing the difficult stuff. I mean, and if they're trying to minimize the help they ask for or whatever, isolating the one area that makes them feel completely inadequate or completely shut down is the perfect place to start. And you can help by starting with conversation around it instead of just jumping right in. And it's one of the things that I have to stop myself from doing a lot. Like I'm hired, I'm there to work, and I just start working. And sometimes I wade in without having a sufficient conversation up front with a person to tell them, okay, so here's what I think we should do, or here's how I'm going to tackle this. I just dive in and start doing, and then I can see the sort of panic look on their face. I'm like, oh yeah, I need to explain what I'm doing again. I get super excited about diving in. And so just having the conversation with them, like we said earlier, helps them focus, helps them see it differently. get more clear about what's going on, and it allows them to get comfortable with you being there before you guys tackle it. And so that little conversation is helpful.
Deborah said, one thing that shocks me is how long things take. I look at an area and think 1 hour, easy, and it takes 3.
Because it's so much more dense than you think. And everything has a decision-making process to it, right? And so sure, if you were completely unattached and you had no idea how much it cost or why it was important or who cared about it, you would make all kinds of decisions, lickety split, zoom, 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 and plow through stuff. And it's a lot of fine sorting and a lot of, getting down to the little bitty bits and trying to rearrange it all. And it does take time. There's some effort. There's a client that I started with a few months ago. And when I originally went to see her, she's trying to get out of her townhouse to move. And she said, I want to be done by Christmas. And I was like, that's not happening. No. We're going to need a lot of time here. We're going to be going through stuff for many weeks. It's not going to happen before Christmas. And she was shocked. Like, what do you mean? Like, well, all these things require decisions, and you're not going to be happy unless we touch them all. You're not going to want me throwing things away that you haven't looked at. So we're going to have to touch everything you own. And doing that requires time. And, I can make decisions for you and haul things out, but then you won't trust that what went out was what you wanted to go out. And therefore, we're going to have to pass it all in front of you. And this happens for clients a lot. And I learned early on, it's like, oh, if I tell them it's going to take a long time, they're not going to want to hire me. Yeah, but they're also not going to be happy if I say, sure, we can get it done. And then we're only 1/10 of the way in by the deadline. And it's like, no. You just need to know you have completely misjudged the situation, and it's going to take a lot longer than you think. Get ready.
Okay, we better get to a couple of announcements, or we will run out of time. I want to remind those who are watching or participating live that we also have a YouTube channel with about 200 videos on lots and lots of organizing topics. Visit cfhou.com/YouTube. And while you're there, subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon if you'd like to get notifications when we post new content. Let's talk about next week.
Okay.
Creating a home that supports the life you love is what organizing is all about. But if we're working to clear a backlog and cultivate habits to reduce future clutter, it can be hard to also find the time and energy for much else. Next week, we're going to suggest strategies to balance competing priorities of clearing clutter and enjoying your best life. Join us on March 8th at noon US Central Time for In Search of Balance, managing your time, energy, and priorities. Let's talk tittle.
Okay, let's talk tittle. Help is on its way. This week's assignment is to evaluate whether you could benefit from enlisting an organizing helper or sharing your help with someone else. If you think you might need help, identify a project or a category of clutter with which you could consider asking for help. The scope and the time frame can be as small as you like. Make a list of people in your life who might make suitable and willing helpers. Think about the strengths that each of them might contribute. Consider whether you can budget for professional help. And note that any potential savings and benefits that might offset the cost, like finding that missing check. A lot of times I end up paying for myself because we find money, cash, checks that haven't been cashed. And so I end up covering the expense of the appointment by found things in the house. If you're considering offering your help for someone, reflect on the motivations for wanting to help that person get organized, and make sure your focus is on what they need and not what you want. Think about how much time you're willing to commit and what kind of schedule might work. Be prepared to make a firm commitment no matter the size of the project. Make a brief list of resources, knowledge, skills, tools, and supplies that you think might help with the project for which you're contemplating offering help. That way you can say to the person that you're offering help, I know how to do X, Y, and Z. I have this tool and that tool. I have some boxes. I have some bins that I'm not using, whatever you can bring to the table to be useful.
And to keep the scope reasonable and
Attainable.
Yeah.
Right? Exactly. Think about it. See if you can ask for help, or see if you can offer help if you're in that position. And let us know how it goes next week.
If you're watching this on YouTube, we would love for you to join us live. To get notifications about upcoming events, we invite you to join the meetup group by visiting cfhou.com/meetup. You can also follow us on Facebook by going to cfhou.com/Facebook, or subscribe to our mailing list by visiting cfhou.com/subscribe. We love to hear from you, so please send us your questions, comments, and topic suggestions on YouTube, Facebook, or anywhere that you find us. And you can always reach us through our website at clutterfairyhouston.com.
There you go. We will be back with you next week. We can't wait to see you again. Thanks for coming today. And we hope that you are contemplating getting some help or helping someone else and joining the army of Clutter Fairy minions who are out there trying to help people get organized. We send you into the world to find or to be a minion. All right. We'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.